Hey there, it's Dr. Tiffany Lamberton of TMD Collective, and this is another episode of Jaw Talk podcast. I'm so excited for my guest today, Dr. Shea Tolbert. Dr. Tolbert is a graduate of Clemson University, Medical University of South Carolina College of Dental Medicine, and the University of Florida Advanced Education and General Dentistry Residency Program. He serves as a key opinion leader for international dental companies, including Planmeca, SprintRay, True Abutment, Zimvi, and Henry Schein Digital Academy. He's also on the board of education and Planmeca. He lectures on the practical application of technologies including digital impressions, CAD/CAM dentistry, digital radiology, CBCT 3D imaging, digital smile design, orthodontics, guided implant surgery, and 3D printing applications in dentistry. Dr. Tolbert currently serves as an affiliate professor at the Medical University of South Carolina College of Dental Medicine and as an adjunct professor at Clemson University Department of Science. He has also served in numerous leadership roles with the American Dental Association at both the state and local levels. Dr. Tolbert is a fellow of the Academy of General Dentistry. He has also been published and featured in several dental magazines, international continuing education webinars, and TED events. He is CEO and co-founder of Launch Digital Dentistry, an educational company focused on implementing digital dentistry workflows to better your practice. He currently practices full-time in a distinguished private practice in Greenville, South Carolina. Let's dive into this amazing episode with Dr. Tolbert. Quick legal disclaimer. All information in this podcast is the opinion of the speakers and not meant to be a substitute for a diagnosis and consultation of a qualified healthcare provider. Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Tiffany Lamberton of TMD Collective, and this is another fabulous episode of Jaw Talk. I am so excited for my guest today, Dr. Shea Tolbert. Okay, I got to tell the story about how we met because I think it was a little bit random.
It
So
was
both of
fate.
us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, welcome to the show. Welcome to Jaw Talk. I'm so happy to have you on the show. So we were both in Chicago for AES. For those of you dentists, you know, all the Chicago midweek winter meetings. So it's a lunch and I'm like the kid in the cafeteria, wide-eyed, like, oh my goodness, where am I going to sit? There's all these tables that are set up with like 12 dentists and I'm having like, I'm sweating. So I see our mutual friend, Dr. David Turok, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see David. I'm going to go sit there. And I happen to sit right beside you. And I'm like, I have a podcast. And you're like, I have a podcast. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
let's do this. So
Well,
welcome to the show.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Tiffany. Yeah, it was kind of like, I said fate, but it's funny how we met because I basically just had the last chair at the table because I got caught up, talking to someone, and then Davey said he saved me a seat. So David Turok is one of my best friends, dentist, and he was a co-resident of mine in residency. And so I pull up and I say, hi, Tiff. And then he and I are talking and you're overhearing it. And then we're like introducing each other. And then quickly, honestly, I felt like quickly we just clicked. And then we had so many samesies, right?
Mhm.
And then we're like, we need to connect beyond this. And I feel like in that room of, just amazing people, the opportunity to meet people like that is just, it's overwhelming. So we're like, all right, let's reconnect after this meeting. And here we are.
So cool. So cool. So tell our listeners kind of like who you are, what you're passionate about, a little bit about your story of dentistry and how you kind of got to where you're at.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we're going to talk a lot about technology. That's kind of like my love or my passion. That's how we kind of clicked it off. But my story is pretty funny. So before dental, right? I started in digital dentistry in 1998. So technically a little over 25 years ago. So I'm 42 years old now at the time of this recording. So over half my life, I've been involved in digital dentistry in some shape or form. And so basically my hometown dentist and one of my best friend's dentists, the two dentists in town, they were involved in digital dentistry in the early days of CEREC. It was 2D. So I obviously was interested and shadowed, and it piqued my interest. And I was kind of like their lab tech a little bit. I would help take the post processing of a crown after they design, and I would get my hands a little wet with the staining and glazing of the crowns back in the original days of a chair side option. You think about that, it's pre-2000, so that dates me a little bit. So, you can see the gray hairs, and I call it seasoning. But I was kind of like a lab tech and CEREC 2D OG, but that it piqued my interest. So in college, I hunkered down. I'm like, all right, this is what I want to do. A lot of people start college day one, they don't know what they want to do, but they're just kind of filling out a major and get funneled in a certain direction. Day one, I kind of knew I wanted to be a dentist because of, what I experienced. And then, so when I fast forward to dental school, before I applied, basically my admission letter was focused on technology and dentistry. So that was like my why. And then fast forward to today, after going through dental school and residency and then applying it in private practice, it's core to everything I do. So my why in digital dentistry started, you know, before dental, basically when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the technology piece of it is just faster and faster. It's changing so quickly now. And, as far as, kind of what I'm passionate about with TMD, TM joints, airway, cervical spine, all of a sudden we can like connect that analog digital world, go back and forth with stuff like Maja, CBCT,
Mhm.
digital scanners. Talk about like what are your favorite like tools that you utilize?
Yeah, so a little bit of everything. And so you can go down different rabbit holes with technology, right? And sometimes it's a little unhealthy because you get into one and you're like, wow, it's just going to take me a few minutes. And then you go, okay, into another 2 hours of a time suck, a time warp is what we call it. But yeah, so chair side, every day, my workflow is all digital. So in my clinical practice, we call it same day with Shea.
I love that.
So it's all about fast, efficient, same day dentistry. So obviously the CAD CAM background from pre-dental, pre-college, and then dental school kind of plugged and played. It was natural for me. It wasn't something I had to kind of seek out and learn after dental school. I kind of already kind of knew about it. But starting in dentistry, I started from day one using it in clinical practice. So chairside oral, iOS, so intraoral scanning. And then that was just kind of a routine thing. And then when we added more technology, so the next step for us was a cone beam, a CBCT. We originally intended CBCT to help us do more implants.
Mhm.
And at that time, we had partnered or had a sister company, a branch off of Family Dental Health with our orthodontic division, and the orthodontic office was connected to mine. So we thought, okay, CBCT is going to be for, beyond a CEF, a little bit looking, for orthognathics and so on. And then what we real quickly realized that when we started taking cone beams, we started seeing what we couldn't see. So then all these doors started opening that we didn't know if we should open them or not, right? We're like, oh boy, all these watches
Perfect.
on teeth that might need endo, or you're squinting on the x-ray thinking, that could be an abscess. Probably it's not hurting. Okay, we'll check it in 6 months. We started taking CBCTs and finding a bunch of incidentals. So then we had the aha, like, wow, there's a lot more to this. So, we applied it in our practice pretty quickly. And then we realized we were serving our patients in a much higher level than we had the opportunity for before, because at that time, 2012, a little over a decade ago, CBCTs were really only for specialists. They really the only ones that could afford the technology at that time. And the applications or liability or fear of integrating that into class, you feel like, oh, I don't have the liability or knowledge to apply that because I'm not a specialist. So there was a fear of a lot of things: cost, liability, can I diagnose it? No training. But we simply started with more orthodontists and we started taking CBCTs because we did some implants. We thought, well, that probably should tie into what we're doing. And then all these doors open: restoratively, endodontically, pathologically, airway, TMD. I mean, every category in dentistry, it just exploded. So we became the poster office to tell a story for a CBCT, an imaging unit, and how and why our story was natural. And then, that progressed to another opportunity, which is taking your data capture, right? Your iOS, your control scanning, your CBCT. And then we start software planning for surgical guides, smile design, airway, TMD. And then we started seeing uses for 3D printing. And we were already used to manufacturing crowns, one block, one tooth, same day with Shea. So that was pretty easy. Like your normal family practice, general dentist is going to do onesie or twosie crowns, right? That's probably 90% of what most practices will do. And so when we started looking at manufacturing from a 3D printing side, we just saw, wow, there's a lot of value to this. It could be quicker, faster, cheaper, better. And fast forward through all that, now the palette or uses for resin are not just models for a suck down or models for an in-house aligner option. We can actually have resins that are approved to use in the mouth for occlusal guards, surgical
Provisionals.
guides, provisionals, and now permanent crowns and partial coverage. So your one block, same day with Shea, I was rate limited by what I could mill and time in office that was practical for a same day with Shea. But now you could do a quadrant of dentistry, and honestly now a full arch of dentistry applying this technology, and your same day with Shea palette or options is no longer onesie twosies, it's a whole arch. And so even in dentures, so the levels keep changing, right? The bar keeps raising. And so we're like, oh my gosh. And when we're at this meeting, I think you and I looked at each other like we have a lot to learn, because we thought we were, and I thought, yeah, I was pretty good on the up and up on tech. And then we got the bar is set high. So Spear and Coy showed how they integrate it with their high level dentistry. And we were doing that type of dentistry, but in an analog way, because that's how we're all trained. So now we're trying to navigate and swim uphill to how do we integrate digital and analog for big cases, full mouth rehab, and do it streamlined so we're not interrupting patient care at our time and the time suck that can go when you get into technology. And it was fascinating. You mentioned mod jaw and jaw tracking. So there's layers, right? And you get into software like exocad, you're taking all this cool technology and then you're just putting it in one spot. And now it's not just a model articulator and some articulating paper and maybe a few photos. Now it's a 3D, a facial scan, a CBCT, an iOS, and the photos, and it's all layered. And there's your treatment plan. Now you're expanding your palette for what you can do for your patients. So it's now beyond a single block tooth option. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I'm just like, it's like another shiny object, It's like, how do you be like, oh, I need that. I want that,
And
So
you have to be careful integrating technology, because when it's something new, you want it, right?
Mhm.
And when it's new, it's what? The dental tax. It's expensive. And so what should you invest in and what gives you the best bang for your buck? And, sometimes we have to learn the hard way, but the bar has been lowered as far as the barrier of entries, right? It's, CBCT now is a third of what it costs. So now general dentists are purchasing at more of a normal rate versus when we integrated it in 2012, a little over a decade ago. So I consider us early adopters of a lot of technology, but because we were already ahead of the curve, I think originally. And then we had a practice that was very healthy, and we're fortunate that we've added more doctors in our offices that already come out now trained in this and expect it. And so it's no longer this 5% of dentists that do CAD CAM. Now it's 90-ish%. If you look at like ADA surveys of people that have already integrated some type of this digital workflow that we're talking about. But then, you have subspecialties and different layers of what you need to add next and add next and add next. But again, the ultimate goal is the best patient care. So the options are limitless and they keep growing. And I feel like we're in a critical, like another growth phase, because everybody's catching up after the COVID years and the companies are catching up, and we're all kind of landing back on our feet in our practices, right? What's the new norm? And now all the technology is being released that have been kind of like delayed from chip shortages and labor shortages and people and supplies. And now it's like, okay, here's all this new stuff. And we're like, again, so we're back at this like, oh my gosh, phase, I got to swim uphill again.
right.
Did you feel that
Yeah.
way?
I do. I mean, well, and I mean, I feel like I'm swimming uphill because I'm trying to have a TMD only practice. And it's that weird gray area between medicine and dentistry where, I have chosen to be fee for service. And people don't understand that if you want to have that, that ease of technology, you don't want to have the gooey, impression material in your mouth. You want the digital scan. You want to have all this tech, but like that costs money for the dentist. So
Yeah.
that,
It's fascinating. And I don't even know if you knew this, but so part of our practice is we're a mixture of a family group practice, but we have general, which is the bulk of our group, but we also have pedo, ortho, perio, and drumroll airway. And our airway division or office was like a side project fascination by one of my partner doctors. Shout out to Dr. Kip Covington. So Carolina Sleep. And he came to me one day and he says, I think I want to do this full time. I said, hey, buddy, why don't you do it part time? Because I need you in my office because you're so good at dentistry. He's the guy that would know how to fix or could figure out how to fix a tooth with a fork and spoon. Like he was he was a guy, he was a MacGyver, right? But he found his why through just helping some people with TMD and airway. And he took a few classes and his mentor was Jimmy Spencer. And then he went down the full, like, I was like, where's Kip? Hey, let's go grab dinner. I'm out of town. I'm in Arizona or I'm out of town. I'm like, where are you doing? And he just took a lot of CE. And then he's like, Shay, I'm not going to do it full time. I'm not going to do it part time. I'm doing it full time. And I was like, okay, well, and at that time I understood the need for occlusal guards and clicking and popping. And my residency was with the ties of the Dawson Academy. And then their faculty was our faculty in Clearwater, Florida through UF. So I knew there was more, and there was a lot of the stuff I had heard, but honestly, I didn't listen to it because it was like given to me then. It wasn't digested because I was still trying to figure out like, before I was truly chairside clinically. And fast forward to Kip, and credit to him and credit to you for being pioneers because we know that TMD and airway and every other thing that modality goes into that is so important. So he has now working on his third location.
wow,
Yeah, it's cool. So we can talk
that is,
beyond the podcast and we can help each other for sure.
love that. Love that. Well, and I also love that you're a KOL, which key opinion leader for a lot of these different companies,
Yeah.
SprintRay, some different 3D printers. How did you kind of get started in that arena?
Yeah. So it kind of just happened naturally. I like-minded like yourself, we met at this nerdy dental conference. So I would hang out at stuff I was interested in outside of my office. I would go to learn about implants. I would go to learn about chairside scanning and then CBCTs. And then I found my friends that are actually the thought leaders or podium speakers for this. And I found people that I just really enjoyed outside of the classroom that were doing that. And I asked them advice. And honestly, a lot of them became my mentors and friends. And, that opened doors for me with the companies because, naturally we're doing this chairside. And they'll say, hey, you want to do this little local event on chairside scanning and how you guys have succeeded with, using the product, right? And it helps them, sell the machines. But yeah, there's a lot of people to thank along the way. And maybe I can just give a little bit of my story beyond the pre-dental school stuff, clinical and beyond. I'll touch base on the clinical practice, Shay. So family dental health, we're basically a group practice and we're dentist owned and dentist led. So we're around 50 locations, about 80-ish docs in South Carolina, North Carolina. So I'm pretty sure we're the largest group practice in the Carolinas. And it wasn't always that way. We were about 10 to 12-ish practices in the upstate, all within an hour of each other. And then after COVID, I think a lot of dentists got burnt out, wanted to sell their practices, and had a pretty good reputation. And it just a snowball effect, right? Good people find good people. And the last 3 years, it's okay. Now we're not adding 2 or 3 a year. We're no longer doing de novos. We have so many come and say, hey, buy my practice. And so I think the practice brokers realize that and they feed us first, so I think we're the big fish, but, naturally, symbiotically, I think because of, we've done well with our dentistry and our people, our culture per se. And so, yeah, so we grew to that size, but we're a mixture of general pedo, ortho, perio, airway, like we mentioned. But I was one of the first, I was the third one in out of these 80-ish docs. So I'm technically a senior partner, right? But I'm an extension of the clinical director for our group. And really, I'm kind of focusing on new doctor mentoring, coaching, education coordinator for the group as well. So bringing inside and outside speakers like yourself to help with CE for our group and our docs. And then also, honestly, my favorite thing is technology integration, right? Comes naturally from my background and my why. Sure. Fast forward to that, we just want to help our doctors succeed. And basically, when they integrate technology in their office, you said it yourself, it can be overwhelming and costly. But iOS, scanning, CBCT, 3D printing softwares, then you can go into designing and planning, and then you can go into manufacturing beyond the same day with Shea Block. And then now there's just an ever expanding palette and thirst, for 3D printing applications, which is a big boom in the last 3 years for sure. And so I help the doctors, with their models, their design, their manufacturing. And sometimes it's we do it as a collab, and sometimes I do it for them. And then, I got to transfer it. And then so their team can win. We want them to succeed, basically help them all kind of level up. And then clinically chair side, my wheelhouse is general family practice, And so my specialty though, within our group and within my office at our location is smile design, full mouth rehabs, ortho and implants. And that just goes back to my original training and residency because it was tied to high-end dentistry, full mouth rehab type situations, how to diagnose plan. But I didn't honestly know how to execute it. When you got out of residency, you just knew too much, but you didn't know how to apply it. And then when you get 5 years out, you're thinking, okay, I've seen everything. And then you get 10 years out, you're like, I didn't know anything when I was 5 years out. Now I'm exactly 15 years into clinical practice. And I still feel like I know nothing. And it's humbling and it's good to stay that way because again, we've experienced another growth, in technology. But CBCT, like we talked earlier, was my big wow. Chairside skiing, I felt like, obviously no one wants the putty and drool and choking for 4 minutes for an impression. So I figured eventually everybody would come on board, right? Just like digital x-rays, when I was in dental school, we developed films and tanks, and then we went to a dark room, and I thought that was really cool then. And 20 minutes later, we'd look at an x-ray. But now it's all digital, right? So it's like, obviously we knew that was going to transition. But, besides the intro scanner now, the CBCT, 3D printers and millings, it's an ever expanding palette. So that's within my clinical practice. Your original question was, okay, how'd you get involved as a KOL? Well, I started using all this stuff, but using it regularly. It wasn't like a pretend user. That was like really what I did every day. So I started taking pictures and documenting. And outside of my clinical practice, I had an idea. And I was like, I want to share this with other dentists, but the ultimate goal is to help people, right? I want people to provide like the best patient care, right? And so I got to share all this knowledge that I have, what little knowledge I have with other dentists so they can do the best they can do for their patients. So that's the original reason why outside of clinical practice, I started saying, okay, to my wife, saying, now I might go out of town this weekend to talk about dentistry. And she was like, okay. And I totally would have done it for free. And I did in the beginning, basically. But now, I've, fostered relationships where you mentioned key opinion leader or KOLs and key expert. And so they give you these titles. And with that comes fun new toys, fun peeks behind the curtain on what's next. And what you think is fun is called beta testing, but it's not really, right? Because you get cool new stuff, but it doesn't really work right because it hasn't released to the public. And you get to play with the toys, but then it's a time suck because it's not working right. And then you got to give them feedback. Same thing with manufacturing. You get to print stuff before it releases to the public, but it takes a lot of time. So I realized, okay, I can't interrupt my family life, my work life for this little passion. So I had to find a balance. And so the idea of Launch Digital Dentistry, my education company, was born. But it honestly started in dental school. So my best friend in dental school, well, not one of my best friends, one once you meet me, I guess I've become friends with a lot of people, but one of my closest friends, right, in dental school was Wally Renee, and he's a power speaker and now pretty much obvious, I think, internationally known for digital dentistry and has probably best in class facility for education in this high end exocad software, full mouth rehab, along with his partner, Michael Defeat. And so we in dental school and after dental school, we kind of had a vision for maybe making a learning center because we were doing stuff for free and for bubble gum. And we realized travel isn't as cute as it or sexy as it sounds, because then you interrupt your family life. And then I started to, build a family. I have kids, right? I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. You think you're busy in the beginning and then they get older and they get more busy. And then now they have activities that rule my calendar. So I was like, there's got to be a better way for this side hustle passion I have besides doing it for free and trying to ask my wife for permission if I can go be a nerd, for a weekend and talk to dentist about it. So I know it's a long version, but I think it's cool. It's just kind of how it happened, right? And so the idea was born, and we made a company, and we didn't really do anything. We just said, okay, we have a logo. It's a rocket, and it's about taking your team to the next level. And so he could speak, and he was internationally known. And I was like this guy that can do local study clubs, but I had a lot of clinical practice and a little to give. So doing events with Wally, Renee, and then doing events with another mentor of mine, August de Oliveira out of California, because he was my implant coach and teacher and mentor. I just started kind of learning the game and meeting the people that the companies that are the manufacturers for this technology. So they then elevate you to KOL and you get all this cool stuff. And then they actually will pay you to come and show and talk because they have a budget for it. So that gave me a little bit of the blueprint. And if you haven't heard of us, it's because I basically kind of hid it for a while. Launch Digital Dentistry, that's how the idea formed. But 2017 to 2019, I did the 3D printing tours with August. Basically, he had these 3D printing parties all over the US. And he had 4 or 5 vendors at either a lab or a dealer, and they would put the butts in the seats. We would show up. He would speak. I would be the assistant, like helping people when their computers crashed or how to put a USB in and compress a file, then upload the software. And again, remember, at that time in 2017, pre-COVID, 2018, 2019, 3D dentistry for 3D printing rather was pre-dental, really. The applications were unsure and there really wasn't many dental printers. And there was, which was Form Labs. They actually kind of said, okay, for the dentist, here you go. And then there was SprintRay. And then there was a lot of other printers that were from China that weren't made for dental, but we figured out how to jailbreak them and use software not made for dental, AutoCAD, Mesh Mixer. So we would take a intraoral scan, which we all kind of knew how to do at that point, but how do we make the model? How do we manufacture it? So doing from scan to manufacture, there were a lot of steps and it was kind of messy from the software side. And then after you printed it, kind of messy how you post-processed it. So if you're not familiar with 3D printing, you print the object that you've half an hour on the computer to figure out how you can make it a model, a printable file. You print it and you're like, yes. And then you got to figure out how to wash it and cure it. And there was nothing for that really at that time. So we used Tupperware, a magnet spinner, and we would go on Amazon and buy nail cures, a UV light, because really 3D printing is flowable composite in a tub. A light source is going up and down, a build plate's going underneath, and a build plate's going up and down. It generates a model. And so it's already familiar technology as far as if you look at the simplistic form, it's composite basically. And then what's in the composite is dye, and then also fillers to either make it partially ceramic or all plastic, right? And so these 3D printing tours gave me an insight of what these companies could be for. And I saw them working fast, bring it to market for dental, right? And there was a few that were leading the way and like 2 other vendors that were not dental, but they could be really cheap, a few $100. And then we would show you softwares to make a guide like Blue Sky Bio or Planmeca's Romexis or Mesh Mixer. And you can figure out to do some extra stuff in AutoCAD. And shout out to all my mentors and friends because we really learned how to do this together. But on YouTube, Baron Gruder was a big help because he would make in-house aligners, but he'd show you step 1 in mesh mixers to do this, step 2, he gave us a cookbook. So I figured out how to physically make the model. Then August as well in these classes. So I kind of leveled up pretty quick. And so then you had to really figure out, okay, I can't have all the printers, can't have all the toys. It just doesn't make sense time-wise. And then we started narrowing the funnel. And so I started working with companies for chairside scanning, CBCT imaging, and 3D printers. And so that all obviously works together. So that's kind of how the journey started. And we threw our first real course, Launch Digital Dentistry. I had August come speak day 1, and day 2 was Wally and I doing a same day smile design on myself because I have gaps in my teeth. I'm not getting veneers, but I tried to show you like how I could close my gaps. Like if a patient came to your practice today and said, I want it done today, you have that emotional visual connection on a design software. But if you could try it in that day, a trial smile, it's a wow factor and your case acceptance goes good. So there it goes back to the message. We want to do the best patient care, but the technology helps us get there faster instead of, okay, see at the consult, see at the try-in, you could technically do it all, but you'd have to be pretty much of a wizard in all these softwares and hardware. So we had a little small percentage of dentists that were thirsty for that or really wanted to learn more. And we did a really cool event 5 years ago, basically today, it was in March in Greenville, my backyard. And that was the vision that Wally and I had in dental school, to do something in our backyard because we were doing a little stuff and we weren't really getting paid and we were spending time away from our families. So fast forward, to today, we're coming back alive, but that was 2019, 5 years ago. And remember what happened in 2020?
Yeah, the world shut down.
So I was like, man, all this came together. I'm hot stuff. I got August, I've got Wally, and here's this little dentist in Greenville, South Carolina that kind of shows you maybe how to do this in your practice, right? As well. So I thought we were a good mixture of like the Avengers. We had all these characters and we kind of had all these different powers and backgrounds, California guy, East Coast guy, and then we're blending everything in between. So that's kind of the journey that led me to this. But then 2021 to 2023, everything moved online. It didn't give me much sizzle. I did webinars just like yourself and with those different technology companies, but it just didn't give me the Shea that I know is like, I want to interact how I met with you. I mean, that's fun in a group setting, small, and learn together, right? And the learning beyond the classroom is what's fun to me. That's where I've learned the most, probably the most in dentistry. You add up everything we learned getting ready for dental school and college, and then in dental school, and then you're like, you have your nerd phase, right? And then you get to practicing, and then you'd realize, wow, I got to learn more. So you had to take a lot of time and money and learn more. But then I think my secret weapon is meeting people like you, Tiffany. So when we talk outside of the classroom, you can tell me about your TMD practice and your airway, and we learned how we could do this. So 21 to 23 was online, and then 2024 we're back. So just, I'll give you more about how to follow us and track, but I think we'll be able to do some fun events again now that the world is back and not shut down, but you never know. We can't take anything for granted.
Yeah. Well, I love about mentorship. What would you say is your top 3 advice for the dentist that is just getting out into practice right now?
Yeah. So probably, well, if you just want to tell, I'll speak personally, like what I like to help them integrate is technology. So start with small wins, meaning, it is struggle sometimes adding chairside scanning. And we've failed at that a few times back in the quadrant scanner days. So we had scanners made for quadrant dentistry, right? And then in about 2000, whenever 3Shape launched the Trios 3, that really disrupted the market because it became a full arch scanner with accuracy and speed. So now all of us that had chairside scanners, but was really good at quadrants, your same day dentistry for your general one or two odd crowns. Now the bar was raised. And so all these technologies started changing and advancing so fast. So small wins because, if you're in the early adopter phase, you have a lot of struggles. And teams have a lot of struggles applying it chairside and staying with it. And then it becomes the thing that's expensive that collects dust in the corner, and then you start resenting it. So we failed a lot of times. I can tell you what not to do, right? So the knowledge I can give as the top three is say, hey, take small wins. Don't try to do everything at once. So if you're, it's a layer, then add another layer, then add another layer. So I would chart with chairside scanning, just kind of your normal thing that'll help you every day. And then my second advice would be, hey, look at softwares to start designing if you want to, but then you can offload that. That's not for everyone. Some people want to tinker and wax up their own crowns in their lab and trim their dies. That's those dentists that were precursors to us, right? But then there's weird ones like me as well that want to kind of design it on a computer. And then now you have lab software access to general dentists, and now we can do stupid things that, everything. And it's pretty exciting. So yeah, I think add one step at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself, because once you think you're caught up, it's going to be something better that comes out. It's just like this iPhone. You got the newest iPhone, right? And you're like, yes, I got the latest model. And then next year you see the commercial, or 2 months later, the next one drops. And you're like, I've got a 12 and now it's a 13. And then fast forward, I need a 15 because the camera, it was so cool then, but the cameras now have spatial recognition, and you can do a 3D model scan just on your app on your iPhone. So it's just like that technology. Don't ever feel like you're too far behind. Never feel like you're ahead of the game.
Always like something to help you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of what I took home from the AES when I met you. I was like, I thought I was kind of like way ahead of the curve. And, I get in there and I'm like, I have to learn when I get back home, and I got a baseball game and a cheer competition to go to. And I really want to do this online exocad module. And, you're never going to be caught up. So I've learned to kind of like take the chill pill. The intent is to do better patient care, and technology helps you do it, right? But it's not for everyone, you just got to take baby steps. I think that's the most important part. And you'll find every office flavor is different and unique, because I really wanted every office to be what we were being, chairside milling. And that's a really small percentage that succeed with chairside milling, because honestly, a chairside mill can be a struggle in a machine that you resent, because you have to take care of it, calibrate it, maintain it. And a dentist doesn't really have a full-time, if they're really busy or a healthy practice, they don't have time to be an engineer as well, and a technician when it breaks, and when it doesn't work, interrupts your practice. So we've basically offloaded that over time, and we have an in-house lab tech. And shout out to my chairside assistant now, full house lab tech, Tanya Hall, because she's a software geek. Her husband builds computers at home, so she naturally came good to her, and she's very good at staining and glazing. She's a wonderful artist. So if you find someone that you're lucky enough to have in your life, yes, you can go down these little niches, if you will, but I wouldn't have survived without the people around me with integrating. And same thing happened with 3D printing. I was doing a lot of it myself. I'm just now, past the point of, transferring it, because, it was pre-dental needs, and then you have machines and it kept changing, and you don't want someone to accidentally mess up a machine. But now it's automated at the purpose, especially SprintRay's workflow. Shout out SprintRay. So so I have no monetary. I hope we can get monetary,
I
the
would
future
love
for this. Maybe we'll threaten them. But yeah, SprintRay, I know you said yeah too. And I think we both were like, And so they created a workflow solution from print to post-process. Remember I told you how messy that was? And then also to streamline, you print, you wash, you cure. Basically, you hit a button, it does all the calibrations, heating up, make sure your print's there. And then you take it out, you put it in this button machine, you press the button, it washes it, it dries it. And then you take it off, and then you put it in a curing oven, and you hit the button for whatever resin it is. And it cures it to the right temperature, to the right time for the purpose of that resin. And so now it's streamlined, it's automated. We don't have nail bed cures. that we bought on Amazon because it needs to be properly post-processed for the clinical use, right? Especially if it's going in the mouth.
Right.
But they make it easy. So, okay, now there's a barrier entry that's now bars lower. And then if you don't, I think so the other barrier, right? What we talked about was software. How do you get from here to there? And so software is interesting because you can have different companies tell you their software is the best or integrates the best or it's open or closed. And then if your technology is not all talking to each other under the same brand or umbrella, yeah, it's not a easy workflow, right? So you want easy efficiency. And I think SprintRay had the coolest solution for that in that they developed a cloud network where you log in and then you basically prescribe what you want from a crown to an occlusal guard. And then in a few seconds, AI has designed and your file is there. Or you have a 3Shape designer, it's like an Uber, email you within a few hours. They say within 48 hours, but oftentimes I email it. And before I leave the office, I already got, okay, your file's ready. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can print it before I leave. They're just that fast. And they're using 3Shape, a lab, and designers all over for lab software. So now that pain point is being erased. So now you've got data acquisition, the iOS, the CBCT, and then you figured out how to streamline post-processing, but the designer software in the middle is now click. And what used to take me half an hour, a guy's time is different than a woman's time, right? So I used to tell my wife, hey, I'm going to go to the office. I'll be there for a few hours to 3D print some models. After watching a bunch of YouTube videos and playing around because you hit some pain points, I'm missing dinner, right? And so you got to figure out, oh, is this worth it? But I survived a little bit of that learning curve, but thank goodness now you just click and in 2 seconds, your design's there, which used to take me a while in AutoCAD, Mesh Mixer, and then nail bed curing afterwards. So it's really cool because once you think, all right, this is it, this is the best it can ever get. Then
Keeps changing.
Then you got a facial scanner. You're like, well, how would I use that? It looks cool. And then the software that I think it wins is ExoCAD because you basically take all this technology and once you put it in the software, you layer it and the world is yours if you want to be a prosthodontist or a simple dentist and in just whatever road you want to take. So I don't know. I think it's just the coolest time to be in dentistry. And it was my why from the beginning. And I had no clue. I was just printing one tooth, and milling. And now we're printing teeth.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm in a manufacturing engineering town. So we have big engineering companies from Michelin to make your tires, right? We have GE that makes your refrigerators and all kind of stuff, turbine engines for airplanes. We have BMW that manufactures the cars you drive on the road. Floor Daniel, which is architecture design for big buildings. And I could just list. So I'm in an engineering town. So like engineering, and when I start doing this stuff chair side, my patient base understands it and they're already using CAD. And so when I'll try to like wow them with, look at this, I can 3D print this. They're like, yeah, I use AutoCAD every day. And I'm like, what are you making? They're a car. And I'm like, oh, cool. Or jewelry, So an airplane engine or a building, like this stuff is already there, but now it's dental and it's regular in dentistry now. And it's no longer a pain point barrier, I think, because of the point of entry is finally there where the general mass can afford it. And the learning curve is, a lot lower, faster, and the materials are stronger, better, and it's just getting better. So what a cool time.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so interesting too. And I mean, I hear you talk, I hear like Seth Atkins, David, the Turok, they're all in my Chicago study club.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my gosh.
Yeah, David's speaking. Shout out to David Turok. So he's speaking next year at AES. And if you guys are listening to this and don't know what AES is, it's American Equilibration Society. Yes, it's a nerdy conference, but yes, it's worth it. And it's not for just dentists. Bring your orthodontist, bring your Tiffany Lamberton, bring your airway specialist, bring your periodontist. Every single specialist in the room that you work with, if you're a general dentist like myself, bring those friends along and you will learn how to take your dentistry your patient care to a level you never imagined, because multidisciplinary care is so important. And I know you know that because you're in a very fascinating field with very high knowledge of all these things that's beyond dentistry and the teeth. It's health, wellness, airway, life. Like your why is saving someone's life, right? They can die if they can't breathe. And if they can't breathe, they can't sleep. And if they can't sleep, they can't think. And then they can't be a husband or a wife. So like I've seen Kip, my partner that did his specialty airway practice, his why, and I didn't. I argued with him over tacos and beer, why he should not just do it part-time, but I understood there's a higher level to that. And that's so cool. So
Yeah.
hats off to you, Tiffany.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, my whole thing is just like also with craniofacial growth and development with kiddos, and if we can use all of this like new modern imaging technology with our littles, and just start to direct that growth, that's the part that, my whole thing has been like modern imaging is almost like a crystal ball where you can kind of start to predict who's going to be that high risk TMJ patient when they're 4, who's going to be that high risk OSA patient when they're 4 or 5 or 6, I mean, so that's where I get really excited is like
Tongue ties, tongue thrust,
intervening before the
intervention.
disease has happened,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a very baseline knowledge of that for pedo, but now I'm aware that when I refer a teenager or a preteen, like my son that's 9 and he's a snore, now I realize, there's a lot to this. And so
Mhm.
working with specialists like yourself, and we have this specialty group in town that's orofacial, that does a lot of tongue tie releases, but I thought it was only for ENTs and pediatric like pathology stuff. But now our relationship bridge is pretty normal. And you've helped pioneer that. I think you're a groundbreaking thought leader in that industry. And I'm just fascinated to learn more about it and from yourself because
Well, I think it should be the general dentist that really is driving that interdisciplinary team because,
yeah,
you can have your body worker or your myofunctional therapist or your chiro or, but it still needs to be the general dentist who has this knowledge and this understanding and can see on the images what's happening. And then we're the ones that are like the air traffic controller, right?
yes,
So
yes. Yeah, you can help everyone fly, right? So
yeah, yeah.
it's a fascinating, you've rapidly evolving specialty, and you're a specialist in it. So it's really cool.
Well, thank you. I'm not like a true specialist, but I
You are.
do feel like my dual degrees in physical therapy and dentistry make me a little bit of a unicorn. So
You're a queen.
thank
I love it.
you so much. Well, tell us, kind of give a shout out to what you're excited about in the future here. Do you have
Yeah.
you want to
Huh.
promote?
How much time do you have?
Go for it.
All right. Well, yeah, there's some stuff I can't speak of because I'm a KOL, but no, the KOL stuff is not as cute as it sounds. But yeah, it's just getting better, faster, cheaper, stronger. And I think streamlining things to help teams actually succeed in integrating it and applying it in office is now the reality, not the exception. And with our group, I'm finding that, okay, I don't have those pain points or barriers with the new office that we onboard. We've got it pretty much figured out how to level them up for a chair side and then which practices need the CBCTs and then adding the 3D printer and which software they might need for their practice and how the style or flavor they have. So streamlining it and now everything AI, they talk about it on the news about chat GPT and all this stuff. Like, if I was in college, I would be kicking my feet up because to write 3 paragraphs or like a whatever essay. I don't know. I struggle with that. That would take me 3 days, 3 days
Yeah.
because I'm too like hypercritical of my words and stuff. And I really wasn't good at the reading and English thing. Right. But I love math and science. I excelled in that. But now they just go to an app on their phone and say, write a story about blah, blah, blah. And it spits out this really cool thing that can't be plagiarism because it's all different every time, right? So AI is changing everything around us. And so in dentistry, it's changing everything that I used to take me 30 minutes to, I'll be right back home, honey. That, I disappeared and then I missed dinner is now just you click the button. So AI is going to rapidly change, and even it's becoming normal in X-rays.
Like caries detection and like Pearl AI, look at the X-rays and
Take
the
an
grading.
X-ray, yeah. We're all I think digital now. Where you're squinting still or changing contrast, like click a button and it goes, "Boop, boop, boop, boop." And then, it's not say all be all, but it helps the patient acceptance and it helps you maybe see stuff you were missing. And it's just a click of the button. And then, so now it's becoming the standard of care for comprehensive dentistry. And so that's where my next journey is like, okay, so the full mouth rehab reconstruction cases using exocad. Man, that's fun for me because now I can layer in the CBCT, the scans, the photos, the jaw tracker, the facial scanner, the MRI. I mean, it's just, whew.
Yeah.
And, the software for it has AI now built in, and you get another update next month, and you're like, click a button. And so it's pretty cool. So ever expansive software is where it's at. The hardware is mostly the same. It just depends on the manufacturer and kind of what spice they put on it. But the software ties it all together, all the data acquisition. And then the sky's limits, just limitless now. It's just limitless. It's like taking that limitless pill and you can do anything.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Shea Tolbert, thank you so much for being on the show. And we're going to put all of this stuff in the show notes, where to find you, where to connect with you. And we'll have to have you on for part 2 because
Yeah.
there's so much to talk about.
I need to interview you for a few things. So you're definitely going to be my next guest on the unreleased podcast that's in the vault. I've got a lot of,
Do you have a name for it, or?
I don't have, I guess, okay, Launch Digital Dentistry is my Instagram account for it. So once I figure out the name, I guess I'm going to call it Launch Digital Dentistry, but maybe have to be called something else. I got to look at the legal part of it. But once I press that button, yeah, I've got a lot of great interviews of thought leaders like yourself, the manufacturing, these companies, their upper management, the CEOs, the founders, their stories of how they started pre-dental, how they got into dental, and their personal stories, which are just amazing. And those podcasts, I think, are just fun. I just did it just for fun. And then I'm realizing, wow, these are great stories I want to share because people are asking questions about these companies. Like you were saying, how did you become a KOL? Well, I just started hanging out and I didn't go away and I used it every day. So then I, become friends and then, hey, what do you think about this? I give them feedback. Hey, what do you think about that? Give them feedback. And then, it's a snowball effect of just good relationships. But yeah, so in closing, you can follow me on Instagram at Shea, SHEA .Tolbert. And that's a little mixture of just who I am, like my personal, my family, it's family, food, fun, football, and teeth. But I want to point you to, if you want to just look at teeth or digital dentistry, follow Launch Digital Dentistry. It's just one word. It's a mouthful, but launch like the rocket. Look in the show note. And then I think if you look on it like today, you'll see some content. It stopped at like 2020, because basically everything kind of shut down and I was just less motivated. And then I started interviewing people. So I've got this vault I'm going to release. So I'm going to hit the go button and drip some content again, and then it'll be alive. And so you'll see daily story. I'm a story person. I love just showing just stuff I see, stuff we're doing in the office every day. I just think it's fun. It's my therapy. It's my creative release. So those are the 2 channels. And then whenever we name the podcast, it'll say, check out this podcast. So I think it'll be cool. And especially whatever part 2 we have cooking.
I love it. I love it. Well, you're doing amazing things. And thank you so much for your time. This was such a great conversation. And my tagline is always stay humble, stay curious. So I think this perfectly summed that up. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much Tiffany for the opportunity. And yeah, I'll see you again soon.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of Jaw Talk with Dr. Tiffany. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion as much as we did. A special thanks to our guest, Dr. Shea Tolbert, for sharing his expertise and wisdom with us. Be sure to check out his educational company, Launch Digital Dentistry, and follow him on Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Jaw Talk for more engaging conversations, and don't forget to support the show. Your contribution goes a long ways for us to continue to bring incredible content to this podcast. Until next time, stay humble and stay curious.